The eviction notice was taped to the door when Patricia Morgan returned from her shift at the diner. The bright orange paper stood out against the faded blue paint like a warning sign, like a countdown to the end of everything. 72 hours to vacate. After that, the locks would be changed and everything inside would become property of the landlord. Patricia stood in the hallway of the apartment building she had lived in for 15 years and felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Someone was cooking fish in apartment 3B. The elevator at the end of the hall clanked and groaned the way it always did. Everything was normal. Everything was the same. Except nothing would ever be the same again. She was 61 years old. She had $43 in her checking account. And in 3 days she would be homeless. Patricia pulled the notice off the door. Her hands were shaking. She had known this was coming. Had felt it approaching like a storm on the horizon. But knowing didn't make it easier. Nothing could make this easier. Her husband James had died 8 months ago. Cancer had taken him, slowly draining their savings with every hospital visit, every treatment, every desperate attempt to buy more time. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the doctor had said. The words had meant nothing at first. Just medical terminology. But then came the reality. The rapid decline. The pain. The treatments that made him sicker than the disease. James had fought. God, he had fought. But cancer doesn't care about fighting spirit. It doesn't care about love or plans or the life you still wanted to live together. The life insurance barely covered the funeral. Patricia had picked the cheapest casket. The smallest service. She had felt guilty about that. James deserved better. But better cost money they didn't have. The medical bills were still coming. Even after death, the invoices arrived. For treatments that hadn't worked. For hospital rooms where he had suffered. For medications that had only bought days, not months. Each envelope felt like a fresh wound. Patricia had tried. God knows she had tried. She worked double shifts at the diner. 6 days a week. Sometimes 7. Her feet ached constantly. Her back hurt. She was exhausted down to her bones. But she kept showing up. Kept smiling at customers. Kept pouring coffee and taking orders and pretending everything was fine. She applied for assistance. Food stamps. Housing help. Emergency funds. She filled out forms until her hand cramped. She sat in waiting rooms for hours. She told her story to social workers who looked at her with pity but offered little help. There were programs, but she made too much money to qualify. 40 hours a week at minimum wage plus tips was apparently too much. Never mind that it wasn't enough to cover rent and food and utilities and debt. She called every charity, every organization, every number she could find. Churches. Community centers. Non-profits. Some offered a bag of groceries. Others gave her more numbers to call. Everyone was sympathetic. No one could really help. The system was designed for people who had nothing. She had almost nothing. That wasn't quite the same thing. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Every month she fell further behind. Rent was due on the 1st, but she couldn't pay until the 5th. Then the 10th. Then not at all. The landlord had been patient. For a while. Mr. Chen had known James. Had come to the funeral. Had given her time. But patience had limits. Business was business. He had his own bills to pay. Now she had 72 hours. She walked into the apartment and looked around at the life she was about to lose. The couch where James used to fall asleep watching baseball. His indent was still there in the cushions. She hadn't sat in his spot since he died. Couldn't bring herself to. The kitchen table where they had eaten breakfast together for 15 years. Toast and coffee. The newspaper spread between them. Small talk about weather and work and nothing important. She missed that nothing. Would give anything for one more morning of nothing. The bedroom where he had died holding her hand. She had been there. Had held him through the end. Had watched him take his last breath. Some people said that was a gift. To be there. To not let someone die alone. Patricia wasn't sure. Sometimes she thought it might have been easier not to see it, not to have that final image burned into her memory. The walls were covered with photos. Their wedding day. James in his ill-fitting suit looking nervous and happy. Patricia in her mother's dress because they couldn't afford a new one. Vacation pictures from the one trip they took to the beach. Photos of nieces and nephews. Other people's children because they had never had their own. Patricia walked from room to room touching things. Remembering. This apartment wasn't much. The carpet was worn. The appliances were old. The bathroom sink had leaked for 3 years. But it was home. Had been home. Would never be home again. Patricia spent that night packing. Not everything. She couldn't take everything. The furniture would stay. The dishes. The television. All of it would become Mr. Chen's property. She wondered if he would sell it or throw it away. Wondered if some stranger would sleep on the couch where James died. Eat at the table where they had shared 15 years of meals. Just what she could carry. That was the rule. What fit in bags she could physically transport. Clothes. Not all of them. She had to choose. Summer or winter. Practical or sentimental. She chose practical. You can't sleep in sentiment. Photos. She packed every photo she had. Shoved them into a backpack until it bulged. These were not negotiable. These were all she had left of James. Of their life together. Of proof that any of it had been real. James's wedding ring. She wore it on a chain around her neck. Had put it on the day after he died and hadn't taken it off since. Her mother's necklace. A simple gold chain with a small cross. Not valuable but precious. The only thing she had from a mother who died when Patricia was 12. Important documents. Birth certificate. Social security card. Marriage certificate. Death certificate. The paperwork of a life. She put them in a plastic folder. Protected them. You needed these things. To prove you existed. To access services. To prove someone had died so you could grieve legally. The essentials of a life reduced to 2 duffel bags and a backpack. Everything else abandoned. Let go. Lost. Patricia looked at the 3 bags sitting by the door and thought about how quickly a life could be compressed. How little actually mattered when you lost everything. On the 3rd day, she walked out of the apartment for the last time. She turned off the lights. Locked the door. Left the key on the counter inside like Mr. Chen had instructed. She didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Looking back would break her and she couldn't afford to break. Not yet. Not when she still had to figure out where to sleep that night. The hallway was empty. No one came out to say goodbye. Patricia had kept to herself these last months. Too ashamed to make eye contact with neighbors. Too afraid they would ask questions she didn't want to answer. How are you? How are you managing? Are you okay? She was not okay. Had not been okay in a long time. She took the stairs instead of the elevator. Wanted to delay the inevitable. Each step felt like walking toward a cliff. At the bottom was the street. The world. The unknown. Everything she had been dreading. Patricia stood on the sidewalk outside her former building. Former home. Former life. The morning was cold. Gray clouds threatened rain. Traffic moved past. People walked by on their way to wherever people go. No one looked at her. No one saw a woman whose life had just ended. She was invisible. Just another person on a sidewalk. They had no idea. Patricia walked through the city with no destination. Just walked because standing still felt like giving up. The bags were heavy. Her shoulders ached. But she kept moving. Past familiar streets. Past the diner where she worked. Past the grocery store. Past the park where she and James used to walk on Sundays. The homeless shelters were full. She had called them all. Every single one. The woman on the phone at St. Mary's had been kind but firm. We have a waiting list. 3 months minimum. Maybe longer. Can you stay with family? No, Patricia had said. No family. Friends. No. Is there anywhere you can go? That's why I'm calling you. I'm sorry. I wish I could help. Check back in a few weeks. Sometimes spots open up. Sometimes spots open up. As if homelessness was a restaurant reservation. As if she could just wait patiently for a table. She had no family. James had been an only child. His parents were dead. Patricia's parents were dead. She had a sister somewhere in Arizona, but they hadn't spoken in 20 years. Some grudge over their mother's will. Patricia couldn't even remember what the fight had been about. Just that it had seemed important at the time. Now it seemed stupid. Pride and stubbornness that had cost her the only family she had left. No friends with space to take her in. Her friends from work were kind, but they had their own problems. Their own struggles. Marie had 4 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. Susan lived with her elderly mother. Linda was going through a divorce. No one had room for a 61-year-old widow with baggage, literal and otherwise. She was on her own. Truly, completely on her own. As evening approached, Patricia found herself near the old harbor. The part of the city that had been abandoned years ago when the shipping industry moved to the new port 15 miles south. She remembered when this area had been alive. Busy. Full of workers and trucks and the smell of salt and diesel. James had worked here for a few years when they were young. Before he got the factory job. Now it was a ghost town. Rusted warehouses with broken windows. Graffiti covering walls. Weeds pushing through cracked asphalt. Broken docks that jutted into murky water. And ships. Dozens of them. Left to rot in the water. Patricia stared at the ships. Some were half-sunken, listing at dangerous angles. Others looked like they might go under any day. But a few looked almost intact. Forgotten but not quite destroyed. Abandoned but still standing. She thought about her options. Sleep on the street where it was dangerous, where she would be vulnerable, where people would see her shame. Or find shelter in one of these abandoned vessels where at least she would have walls and a roof. Where no one would see her. Where she could hide from the world and its judgment. The choice was obvious. When you have no good options, you choose the least terrible one. Patricia waited until dark. The sun set slowly, turning the sky orange and purple. She sat on a curb and watched. This was it. This was the moment her life officially hit rock bottom. 61 years old and about to break into an abandoned ship to sleep. She thought about calling someone. But who? And what would she say? She had her phone. She had kept the phone because you needed a phone to get calls about jobs, to stay connected to what remained of the world. But the battery was at 15% and she had nowhere to charge it. Had to conserve power. No. There was no one to call. No one who could help. No one who would understand. Patricia waited until dark. Then she walked down to the old dock. The wood creaked under her feet. Each step felt uncertain, like the boards might give way and plunge her into the water below. Signs warned of danger and trespassing. Private property. Keep out. Enter at your own risk. But there was no one around to enforce them. No security. No cameras that she could see. Just emptiness and decay. She chose a mid-sized cargo ship. Not the biggest. Those looked too unstable. Not the smallest. Those looked too damaged. Something in between. The SS Helena. The name was barely visible under layers of rust and grime. She could just make out the letters. Like a ghost of what it used to be. A rope ladder hung down the side. Patricia tested it carefully, pulling hard to see if it would hold her weight. The rope was frayed in places. Old. But it seemed solid enough. She had no choice but to trust it. Patricia climbed up, her bags slung across her shoulders. The weight made it difficult. She had to stop halfway up. Her arms shook. Her breath came in gasps. She was not in shape for this. Too old. Too tired. Too broken. But she kept climbing. One rung at a time. Because what else could she do? Give up? Let go? Fall into the water and drown? She pulled herself over the railing and onto the deck. Stood there for a moment, catching her breath. Her heart was pounding. from exertion, from fear, from the surreal reality of what she was doing. The deck was a disaster, littered with debris, broken equipment she couldn't identify, rotted wood, bird droppings everywhere, rust flaking off metal surfaces, glass from broken lights. But the structure seemed solid. The ship wasn't sinking, wasn't falling apart. Not yet anyway. Patricia found a door that led below deck. Heavy metal, rusted around the edges. It was unlocked, or maybe the lock had broken years ago. She pushed it open. The hinges screamed. The sound echoed across the empty harbor. Patricia froze, waiting to see if anyone would come investigate. But there was only silence. No voices. No footsteps. Nothing. She pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The smell hit her immediately. Mold, rust, decay, salt. The smell of something dying slowly. Patricia pulled her shirt up over her nose and breathed through her mouth. The interior was dark, pitch black. Patricia pulled out the small flashlight she had packed. A cheap dollar store flashlight, but it worked. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow corridor lined with doors. Paint peeling off walls. Rust bleeding down from ceiling. Water damage everywhere. She tried the first door. Locked. She pulled and twisted the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The second door was the same. Locked or stuck or both. Patricia felt panic rising. What if all the doors were locked? What if she couldn't find a place to sleep? Where would she go? The third door opened. The handle turned. The door swung inward with a groan. Inside was a small cabin, maybe 10 feet by 8 feet. A metal bunk bed bolted to the wall. A tiny desk. A porthole window covered in grime, letting in almost no light. It smelled of mold and salt and decay and death, but it was shelter. 4 walls. A ceiling. A door that closed. Patricia dropped her bags on the floor. They landed with a heavy thud. She sat on the lower bunk. The mattress was gone. Just a metal frame with slats. But she could work with this. She had blankets in her bags. Clothes she could pile up to make it softer. She could sleep here. At least for a few nights while she figured out her next move. If there was a next move. Right now she couldn't see past tonight. Couldn't think beyond surviving until morning. That first night Patricia barely slept. Every sound made her jump. The creaking of metal as the ship shifted in the water. The wind whistling through gaps in the hull. The distant sound of waves slapping against the sides. Footsteps overhead, except there was no one there, just her imagination creating threats. She kept thinking someone would find her. That security would come even though there was no security. That she would be arrested for trespassing. Taken to jail. She wondered if jail might actually be better. At least there would be a bed. Food. Other people. But no one came. The night stretched on. Dark and cold and endless. Patricia lay on the metal bunk wrapped in 2 blankets and shivering. Not just from cold. From fear. From exhaustion. From the reality of where she was and what her life had become. She thought about James. Wondered what he would think if he could see her now. Would he be disappointed? Would he blame her for not fighting harder? Or would he understand? Would he hold her and tell her it would be okay even though it wasn't okay and might never be okay again? She thought about her mother. Dead 30 years now, but still a presence in her mind. Strong. Practical. A survivor. Her mother had raised 2 daughters alone after their father left. Had worked 3 jobs. Had never complained. Never quit. What would she think of Patricia now? Sleeping in an abandoned ship because she couldn't make it work? Patricia cried quietly into her blanket. Not loud sobs. Just silent tears. She was too tired to cry properly. Too defeated. She cried until there were no more tears. Until she was empty. And then finally she slept. In the morning light filtered through the grimy porthole. Patricia woke disoriented. For a moment she didn't know where she was. Then reality crashed back. The ship. The cabin. the homeless life she was now living. Her body ached. The metal bunk had been unforgiving. Her back hurt. Her neck was stiff. She felt decades older than 61. Felt ancient. Felt broken. Patricia sat up slowly. Looked around the cabin in daylight. It looked worse than it had at night. Water stains on the walls. Mold in the corners. Rust everywhere. This was not a home. This was barely shelter. But it was what she had. She dug through her bags and found a granola bar. Breakfast. She had 5 more in the bag. After that she didn't know. She ate slowly. Made it last. Drank water from a bottle. She had 3 bottles. Would need to find a place to refill them. A gas station maybe. Or a public bathroom. Patricia explored the ship. Wanted to know what she was dealing with. Most of the cabins were locked or too damaged to use. Doors hanging off hinges. Walls collapsed. Ceilings caved in. One cabin had a massive hole in the floor. She could see down into the deck below. One wrong step and she would fall through. She found a bathroom. The door said head, which apparently was ship terminology. Inside were 2 toilet stalls and 2 sinks. The toilets didn't work. No water. The sinks didn't work either. She turned the handle. Nothing came out. The pipes were dead. So no running water. That was a problem. Patricia had a few bottles, but they wouldn't last. She would need to figure something out. She found a galley kitchen. Industrial. Meant to cook for a crew. But everything was rusted. The stove didn't work. The refrigerator was empty and powerless. Cabinets hung open, revealing nothing. This ship had been stripped of anything useful long ago. Patricia found stairs that led down. Steep metal stairs. She descended carefully. One hand on the railing. The steps were slippery with moisture. The smell got worse as she went down. Mold and rot and something else. Something dead maybe. The cargo hold was at the bottom. Massive. Dark and cavernous. Patricia shined her flashlight around. The space was mostly empty. A few broken crates. Some abandoned equipment. Chains hanging from the ceiling. Nothing useful. Nothing valuable. She was about to leave. About to climb back up the stairs. But then her flashlight caught something in the far corner. A shape that didn't match the others. Not quite debris. Not quite equipment. Something deliberate. Patricia walked closer. Her footsteps echoed in the massive space. She felt small. Insignificant. Like an intruder in a place that didn't want her. It was a metal box. About 3 feet long and 2 feet wide. Heavy duty. Industrial. It was partially hidden behind a fallen beam. Someone had put it there. Tucked it away. Tried to hide it. Patricia pulled it out. It was heavier than she expected. She had to drag it. The metal scraped against the floor. The sound was loud in the empty space. She knelt beside the box and brushed off the dust. Thick layers of it. Years of accumulation. The box was old. Probably as old as the ship itself. There were no markings on it. No labels. Just plain metal. The box wasn't locked. Patricia tried the latch. It was stiff. Rusted. But after a minute of working it, the latch gave way. She opened the lid. Inside were papers. Lots of them. Yellowed with age. Brittle. But still legible. Patricia pulled out the first document and held it up to her flashlight. It was a ship manifest. Dated June 1968. Lists of cargo with descriptions and quantities. Machine parts. Textiles. Steel beams. Passenger vehicles. Destinations listed. Port of New York. Port of Boston. Patricia set it aside. Not particularly interesting. Just old paperwork. She pulled out another document. This one was different. It was a contract. Official looking. Between Helena Shipping Company and a private collector named Richard Ashworth. For the transport of artwork. 12 paintings by various European artists. Destination New York City. Date of transport June 1968. Patricia frowned. She looked at the manifest again. June 1968. The same month. But the manifest didn't list any artwork. Just standard cargo. Machine parts. Textiles. Nothing about paintings. Nothing about art at all. That was strange. Why would art be contracted for transport but not listed on the official manifest? She dug deeper into the box. More contracts. All similar. All related to artwork. Paintings. Sculptures. Antiques. All transported on the SS Helena between 1965 and 1970. But none of it appeared on the official manifests. Patricia went through every manifest in the box. Checked every date against every contract. Not one piece of artwork was officially documented. This was smuggling. It had to be. The shipping company had been transporting valuable art off the books, probably to avoid taxes or customs duties or legal complications. Maybe the art was stolen. Maybe it was being moved illegally. Whatever the reason, someone had gone to great lengths to hide these transactions. Patricia sat back on her heels. Her mind was racing. This was huge. This was evidence of criminal activity. Decades-old criminal activity, but still. Someone had used the ship to move valuable art illegally. And someone had kept meticulous records. Had hidden them in this box in the cargo hold. Why keep records at all? If you were smuggling, why document it? Unless you needed proof for insurance. Or maybe someone was keeping records as leverage. Evidence they could use if something went wrong. But where was the art now? That was the real question. Had it been delivered? Had it reached its destinations in New York and Boston and wherever else? Or was it still here? Still hidden somewhere on this ship? Patricia stood up. Looked around the cargo hold with new eyes. This space was huge. There could be hidden compartments. Secret storage areas. Places where valuable cargo could be concealed from customs inspectors and port authorities. She had nothing but time. Nowhere to be. No job to go to. No life waiting for her. She might as well search. Patricia spent the next 3 hours searching the cargo hold methodically. She tapped walls listening for hollow sounds. She checked for loose panels. She moved debris. She climbed over equipment. She got filthy, covered in rust and dirt and decades of grime. But she kept searching. And then she found it. A section of the hull on the starboard side. She knocked on it with her knuckles. The sound was different. Hollow. Not solid like the rest of the hull. There was empty space behind this panel. Patricia ran her hands along the metal looking for seams. Looking for any indication of how to access whatever was behind there. Her fingers found the edges. A panel maybe 4 feet by 6 feet. It wasn't welded like the rest of the hull. It was held in place with bolts. Big industrial bolts. Rusted solid but still bolts. She didn't have tools. No wrench. No screwdriver. Nothing. But she had desperation. Patricia found a piece of metal pipe in the debris. Heavy. Solid. She could use it as a lever. She wedged the pipe under the edge of the first bolt and pulled. Nothing happened. The bolt was rusted in place. Decades of corrosion holding it fast. Patricia pulled harder. Threw her weight into it. The pipe slipped and she fell backward. Hit the floor hard. Pain shot through her hip. Patricia got up. Tried again. This time she braced herself better. Pulled with everything she had. The bolt gave a little. Just a fraction. But it moved. Encouraged, she kept working it. Back and forth. Little by little. After 20 minutes of effort, the first bolt came loose. It fell to the floor with a clatter. 3 more bolts to go. Her hands were bleeding now. The rough metal pipe had torn her skin. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. She had to know what was behind this panel. Had to know if her theory was right. It took 2 hours to remove all 4 bolts. 2 hours of exhausting physical labor. By the time she finished, Patricia was shaking. Her arms ached. Her hands were a mess. Blood mixed with rust and dirt. She would need to clean them, bandage them. But first she needed to see. The panel came loose. Patricia grabbed the edge and pulled. It was heavy, solid metal. She had to work it back and forth to get it free. Finally, it gave way. She set it aside and shined her flashlight into the space behind. A hidden compartment, maybe 6 feet deep and 10 feet wide. And inside were wooden crates. 6 of them, stacked neatly. Patricia's heart was pounding. This was it. This had to be it. The art. The smuggled paintings and sculptures. Still here after more than 50 years. Hidden and forgotten. She pulled out the first crate. It was heavy but manageable. She set it on the floor and looked for a way to open it. The lid was nailed shut. Old nails. She used the metal pipe to pry at them. One by one they came loose. Patricia lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped carefully in protective cloth, was a painting. A landscape. Rolling green hills. A farmhouse in the distance. Trees in golden autumn colors. It was beautiful. Patricia didn't know art. Couldn't tell you artists or styles or periods. But she knew beauty when she saw it. She carefully unwrapped more of the cloth. Looked for a signature. There in the bottom corner. A name she didn't recognize. But the style looked old. European. Valuable. Patricia opened another crate. Another painting. This one a portrait of a woman in period dress. Elizabethan maybe. The woman had pale skin and red hair and a serious expression. She looked like nobility. Like someone important. Then another crate. A still life. Fruit and flowers and a wine glass. So realistic Patricia felt like she could reach out and touch the grapes. She opened all 6 crates. 12 paintings in total. Just like the contract said. 12 works of art that had been transported illegally 50 years ago and never delivered. Hidden in this compartment and forgotten. Patricia sat surrounded by priceless art in the hull of an abandoned ship and started to laugh. Not happy laughter. Not joyful. Hysterical laughter. The kind that comes when life becomes so absurd, so impossibly strange that you don't know how else to react. She was homeless. She had $43 to her name. She was sleeping on a metal bunk with no mattress in a ship that should have been scrapped decades ago. She had lost everything. Her husband. Her home. Her dignity. Her future. And she had just discovered what could be millions of dollars worth of stolen art hidden in a secret compartment. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Patricia laughed until she cried. Until laughter turned into sobs. Until all the emotions of the past months came pouring out. The grief. The fear. The shame. The exhaustion. All of it. She sat on the floor of the cargo hold surrounded by stolen paintings and cried like she hadn't cried since James died. When she finally stopped, she felt empty. Hollowed out. But also strangely calm. Clarified. She had a decision to make. A choice that would determine everything. She could keep the paintings. Try to sell them. Patricia knew nothing about the black market, but she could learn. Could find someone. These paintings were worth money. Real money. Life-changing money. She could take them and disappear. Start over somewhere new. No one knew they were here. No one would ever know. Or she could report them. Turn them in. Do the right thing. Patricia thought about James. About what he would want her to do. James had been honest. Almost painfully so. He refused to cheat on taxes even when they were struggling. Returned extra change when cashiers made mistakes. Told the truth even when lying would have been easier. She thought about her mother. What would she say? Her mother who had taught her that integrity mattered. That you lived with your choices. That you had to be able to look yourself in the mirror. Patricia knew what she had to do. Even if it was harder. Even if it meant giving up the easy way out. She knew. Patricia spent that night in her cabin researching on her phone. She was down to 10% battery, but she had to know. Had to understand what she was dealing with. She looked up art theft, international smuggling laws, statutes of limitations, recovery procedures. She learned that there was no statute of limitations on stolen art, that pieces could be returned to rightful owners decades later, that museums and private collectors had been searching for lost artwork for generations. She also learned about finder rewards, that people who recovered stolen art and returned it could receive compensation, sometimes substantial compensation, typically 10 to 20% of the recovered value. 10 to 20%. Patricia did rough math in her head. If these paintings were worth what she thought they might be worth and she was just guessing based on internet research, then 10% could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. But there were no guarantees. The paintings had to be authenticated. Ownership had to be verified. It could take months, years even. And during that time she would still be homeless, still struggling, still sleeping on a metal bunk in an abandoned ship. She could starve before seeing any money, could freeze when winter came, could get sick or hurt with no way to get help. The smart thing would be to sell the paintings illegally, take the money and run, worry about morality later when she had food and shelter and security. But Patricia knew she wouldn't do that, couldn't do that, because James had loved her for who she was, a woman with principles, with integrity. He had trusted her to do the right thing even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And if she sold the paintings, if she became a criminal to survive, she would lose the last thing she had left, her self-respect, the ability to look in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. Some things mattered more than survival. Some things mattered more than money. Patricia made her decision. Tomorrow she would contact the authorities, would tell them what she found, would do the right thing and hope the universe rewarded her for it. She slept better that night, not because the bunk was more comfortable, not because the ship felt safer, but because she had made peace with her choice, had decided who she was going to be in this impossible situation. The next morning, Patricia's phone battery was at 3%. She had to act fast. She took photos of every painting, close-ups of signatures, wide shots showing the full pieces, detail shots of any markings or labels on the crates, photos of every contract, every document, every piece of paper in the metal box. Her phone died just as she finished. The screen went black. Patricia stared at it. She had the photos backed up to cloud storage, she hoped. But now she had no way to communicate, no way to call the authorities. She would have to go in person, would have to leave the ship, leave her only shelter, risk not being able to get back in. But there was no choice. Patricia carefully sealed the crates back up, put the lids on. She didn't have nails to secure them, but she pushed them closed as tightly as possible. Then she maneuvered the crates back into the hidden compartment. It took all her strength. She was exhausted, sweating despite the cold. But she got them all back inside. Then she replaced the panel, positioned it carefully over the opening. She couldn't bolt it back in place, couldn't undo what she had done, but she pushed it flush against the hull, made it look undisturbed from a distance. Patricia climbed back up to her cabin, cleaned herself up as best she could with the limited water she had, changed into her cleanest clothes, tried to make herself look presentable, not like a homeless woman living in an abandoned ship, like someone who should be taken seriously. She walked to the public library. It was 3 miles. Her feet hurt. She was hungry, but she kept walking. At the library, she asked to use a computer. The librarian looked at her with suspicion. Patricia knew how she looked. Tired, worn, desperate. But the librarian let her sign up for a guest pass. Patricia found a database of stolen and missing art. An international database compiled by Interpol and various art recovery organizations. She started searching, entering descriptions, looking for matches. It took hours. The library computers were slow. The database was huge. Patricia's eyes burned from staring at the screen. But she kept going. And eventually she found matches. 3 of the 12 paintings were listed as missing, stolen from private collections. 1 from a family in France in 1964, another from a museum in Italy in 1966, a third from an estate sale in Belgium in 1967. The estimated values were listed: $2 million each. Minimum. Patricia stared at the numbers. $6 million. At least. Just for 3 paintings. And she had 12. She printed out the database entries, used the last of the change in her pocket to pay for copies. Then she did something that terrified her. She looked up the local FBI field office, found the address, and walked there. The building was downtown. Glass and steel and authority. Patricia stood outside for 10 minutes trying to work up the courage to go in. She felt like an imposter, like someone who didn't belong. But she pushed through the doors anyway. The security guard at the desk looked her over. "Can I help you?" Patricia swallowed hard. "I need to report something. About stolen art." The guard raised an eyebrow. "Stolen art?" "Yes. I found paintings. From the 1960s. I think they're the ones on the International Missing Art Database." The guard picked up a phone. Called someone. Patricia waited. Her heart was pounding. She half expected to be thrown out, laughed at, told to stop wasting their time. But after a few minutes, a woman in a business suit came down. She introduced herself as Special Agent Karen Morrison. She led Patricia to a small conference room. "Tell me what you found," Agent Morrison said. Patricia told her everything. About James dying. About being evicted. About taking refuge in the ship. About finding the metal box. About discovering the hidden compartment. All of it. She left nothing out. Agent Morrison listened without interrupting. Took notes. Her expression remained neutral. Professional. Patricia couldn't tell if she was believed or not. "And where are these paintings now?" Agent Morrison asked. "Still on the ship. In the hidden compartment. I put them back. I didn't want to move them in case that was wrong." "And where is the ship?" Patricia gave the location. "The old harbor. The SS Helena." She described how to find it. How to access it. Agent Morrison made more notes. Then she said, "I need to verify this. We get a lot of false reports. People who think they've found treasure or stolen goods, but it's actually nothing." Patricia felt her heart sink. She pulled out the printed database entries. "I found matches. 3 of the paintings. They're listed here." Agent Morrison looked at the papers. Her expression shifted slightly. "These are real database entries. Where did you get your information about the paintings?" "I took photos. Before my phone died." Patricia felt stupid. She had no way to show the photos now. Her phone was dead and she had no charger. "Do you still have the phone?" "Yes, but it's dead." "We can charge it here." Agent Morrison stood. "Wait here." She left. Patricia sat alone in the conference room for 20 minutes. She looked at the bare walls, the table, the chairs, wondered if she had made a terrible mistake, if she should have kept her mouth shut, run away, disappeared with the paintings. But it was too late now. The choice was made. Agent Morrison returned with another agent, a man in his 50s with gray hair. He introduced himself as Special Agent Robert Chen. "Ms. Morgan," Agent Chen said, "we're going to charge your phone. Once we see the photos, we're going to need you to take us to the ship. Can you do that?" "Yes," Patricia said. "Of course." They charged her phone in a special charging station. Patricia watched the battery percentage climb. 1%, 3%, 5%. At 10% they turned it on. Patricia unlocked it, pulled up the photos, handed the phone to Agent Morrison. The 2 agents looked at the photos, scrolling through them, zooming in. Patricia watched their faces, watched as skepticism turned to surprise, then excitement. "These look authentic," Agent Morrison said quietly. "She's got signatures." Labels. Documentation. Agent Chen looked at Patricia. You did the right thing calling us. A lot of people would have tried to sell these on the black market. Patricia shook her head. I couldn't do that. My husband, he taught me to always do the right thing. The agents exchanged a look. Then Agent Morrison said, we're going to need you to take us to the ship. Today. Right now, if possible. Can you do that? Patricia nodded. Yes. I'm ready. They drove to the harbor in an FBI vehicle. Patricia sat in the back. Felt like a criminal even though she had done nothing wrong. Agent Morrison sat beside her. Agent Chen drove. They brought equipment. Lights. Cameras. Portable power generators. A third agent joined them at the site. A woman specialist in art recovery named Dr. Helena Martinez. Patricia led them to the ship. Showed them how to climb the rope ladder. Agent Chen went first. Tested the ladder. Deemed it safe enough. Then the others climbed. Patricia went last. Strange to be coming back here with strangers. With authority figures. This place had been hers. Her secret refuge. Now it felt exposed. Invaded. She led them below deck. Through the corridors. Down to the cargo hold. Showed them the hidden compartment. The removed panel. Dr. Martinez pulled out the first crate carefully. Set up portable lights. Opened the crate with professional tools. She had gloves on. Handled everything with extreme care. She unwrapped the first painting. Examined it closely. Used a magnifying glass. Took photos. Made notes. Patricia watched silently. Holding her breath. After 10 minutes, Dr. Martinez looked up. Her eyes were shining. Her hands were shaking slightly. This is authentic, she said quietly. This is a Monet. A what? Agent Chen asked. Claude Monet. One of the founders of French Impressionism. Dr. Martinez pointed to the signature. This painting was stolen from the Du Bois collection in Paris in 1964. It's been missing for over 50 years. The estimated value is approximately $3 million. Patricia felt dizzy. $3 million. For one painting. Dr. Martinez examined another painting. Then another. Each time her reaction was similar. Shock. Awe. Disbelief. These aren't just stolen art. These are pieces that museums have been looking for. That families have mourned losing. This is one of the most significant art recoveries in decades. The agents documented everything. Photographed the compartment. The crates. The paintings. The contracts from the metal box. They carefully loaded everything into secure containers. Made sure each piece was protected. It took hours. By the time they finished, it was dark. Patricia sat on a crate watching them work. Exhausted. Overwhelmed. Not quite believing this was real. Agent Morrison approached her. Ms. Morgan, we need your statement. Full details. Everything from the time you entered the ship until now. It will take a while. Hours probably. Can you come with us? Patricia nodded. Where? The field office. We'll get your statement documented properly. And we'll need to discuss next steps. What happens now? Patricia asked. To me, I mean. Agent Morrison hesitated. Then said honestly, Ms. Morgan, I'm not entirely sure. You've done nothing wrong. You're not in any trouble. But this is an unusual situation. You're living in an abandoned ship. You have no legal residence. I'm homeless, Patricia said quietly. I have nowhere else to go. I understand. Well, figure something out. Right now let's focus on getting your statement recorded. They drove back to the FBI office. Patricia spent the next 4 hours being interviewed. Answering questions. Going over every detail. Agent Morrison was patient. Thorough. She asked the same questions multiple ways. Made sure Patricia's story stayed consistent. Finally they were done. Patricia was exhausted. It was past midnight. She had been up since dawn. Had climbed up and down the ship multiple times. Had walked miles. had relived the entire traumatic experience. Agent Morrison offered to drive her somewhere. A shelter, maybe. But Patricia shook her head. "Can I go back to the ship? The ship isn't safe, Ms. Morgan. It's condemned property. And now that we've been there, the Port Authority will know people are accessing it. They might secure it. Lock it up." Patricia felt panic rising. "But my things are there. Everything I own." "Well, make sure you get your belongings." "But you can't stay there. It's not safe." Patricia wanted to argue, but she was too tired, too defeated. "Fine. A shelter then." Agent Morrison made some calls. Found a shelter with an open bed. Drove Patricia there personally. Before Patricia got out, Agent Morrison handed her a business card. "Call me if you need anything. And Ms. Morgan, you did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did." Patricia took the card, went inside the shelter, checked in, was shown to a bed in a room with 20 other beds. Women sleeping or trying to sleep, snoring, coughing, the smell of too many people in too small a space. Patricia lay down on the thin mattress, stared at the ceiling, wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. She could have kept one painting, just one, sold it, had enough money to live on. No one would have known. But it was done now. The paintings were gone. The secret was out. All she could do was wait and hope that doing the right thing would somehow pay off. Patricia thought about the irony. She had been sleeping in an abandoned ship because she had nowhere else to go, and her honesty was about to make her financially secure for the first time in years. The process took months, not days, not weeks, months of waiting, months of uncertainty, months of Patricia living in shelters and wondering if she had ruined her life. The FBI kept her updated when they could. Agent Morrison called every few weeks. The paintings were being authenticated. Ownership was being verified. Museums were being contacted. Families were making claims. Lawyers were involved. So many lawyers. Patricia moved from shelter to shelter. The first one had a 2-week limit. Then she went to another. Then another. She lost track. They all blurred together. Different beds. Different women. Same despair. Same uncertainty. She kept working at the diner. Showed up for her shifts even though she was exhausted. Even though every day felt like a battle. She needed the money. Needed something to do. Needed to feel like she still existed. Her coworkers asked questions. "Where are you living? Are you okay?" Patricia lied. Told them she was staying with a friend. Couldn't admit the truth. Couldn't say she was homeless. The shame was too much. 3 months after she found the paintings, Agent Morrison called with an update. "We've verified ownership of 8 of the 12 paintings. They're authentic. The total value of those 8 is approximately $14 million. $14 million. Patricia could barely comprehend the number. The other 4 are still being researched. But Ms. Morgan, under federal law, you're entitled to a finder's reward. For the 8 verified pieces, the reward will be 10%. That's $1.4 million. Patricia sat down. She was in the shelter's common room. Other women were watching TV, playing cards. She couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was hearing. "Ms. Morgan? Are you there? $1.4 million? Patricia whispered. "Yes. But it will take time. The money has to go through legal channels. Claims have to be processed. It could be another few months before you see anything. But I will get it. It's real. Yes, it's real. You'll get it." Patricia started crying. Right there in the common room. Other women looked at her. Looked away. Crying was common here. Nothing unusual. But these were tears of relief. Of hope. Of disbelief that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. That night Patricia couldn't sleep. She lay in her shelter bed and thought about what $1.4 million meant. It meant she could rent an apartment. Buy furniture. Have a home again. It meant she could stop working double shifts. could rest, could heal. It meant she could help other people, could give back, could make James proud. It meant she had been right to do the right thing. For months after finding the paintings, Patricia was still living in shelters, still working at the diner, still waiting. Agent Morrison called. The reward had been approved. The paperwork was done. The money would be transferred to Patricia's bank account within a week. Patricia felt numb. After so long waiting, it didn't feel real. Felt like another false hope. Another disappointment waiting to happen. But 7 days later her phone dinged. A notification from her bank. Large deposit received. Patricia opened the app. Stared at the balance. $1,400,000. It was real. It had actually happened. Patricia sat on her shelter bed and cried again. But this time with pure, overwhelming relief. She rented an apartment that week. Not fancy. Just a simple one-bedroom. But it was hers. Clean and safe and private. She signed the lease. Got the keys. Walked into her empty apartment and stood in the middle of the living room. This was hers. Her space. Her home. No one could take it away. No more shelters. No more moving every 2 weeks. No more sleeping in rooms with 20 other women. This was home. Patricia bought furniture slowly. A bed first. A real bed with a mattress and pillows and sheets. She slept for 12 hours the first night. Deep, dreamless sleep. The sleep of someone finally safe. Then a couch. A table. Chairs. Kitchen supplies. She didn't buy expensive things. Didn't need luxury. Just wanted comfort. Stability. The basics of a normal life. She paid off all her debts. Every medical bill. Every collection notice. Every late fee. She paid them all and felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She put money into savings. A lot of money. She wouldn't make the same mistakes again. Wouldn't live paycheck to paycheck. Would have a cushion. Security. Protection against future disasters. And then Patricia did something that surprised even herself. She thought about the ship. The SS Helena. The place that had given her shelter when she had nowhere else to go. The place where she had found salvation. She sat on the deck of the SS Helena and cried. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. Of disbelief. Of gratitude for the impossible twist of fate that had saved her. $1.4 million. She kept saying it out loud. Testing the words. Trying to make them real. $1.4 million. Patricia used the money wisely. Carefully. With James's voice in her head reminding her to be responsible. To think long-term. To make choices that would last. She rented a small apartment first. Nothing fancy. Just one bedroom. But it was clean. Safe. Had working heat and hot water and a door that locked. After months in shelters, it felt like a palace. Patricia signed the lease with shaking hands. The landlord was kind. An older woman named Mrs. Chen who reminded Patricia of her mother. Mrs. Chen didn't ask questions about where Patricia had been living. Didn't judge. Just handed over the keys and said welcome home. Patricia stood in her empty apartment and cried. Again. She seemed to cry all the time now. But these were good tears. Relief tears. Gratitude tears. She bought furniture. Not expensive things. Simple, practical pieces. A bed. A real bed with a frame and a mattress and sheets and pillows. Patricia slept for 14 hours the first night. Deep, dreamless sleep. The kind of sleep she hadn't had in months. A couch. A table. Chairs. Dishes. Pots and pans. Everything needed to make a home. She shopped at thrift stores mostly. Liked the idea of giving old things new life. Of rescuing furniture the way she had been rescued. She paid off every debt. Medical bills from James's cancer treatment. Collection agencies. Late fees. Every penny owed. She paid it all and felt pounds of weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in years she owed nothing. Was free. Patricia put money into savings. A substantial amount. More than she had ever had in her life. It sat in the bank earning interest. Her safety net. Her insurance against ever being homeless again. She kept working at the diner. Not because she needed the money, but because she needed the routine, the structure, the connection to other people, and because quitting would raise questions, would make people wonder where she got money. Patricia wasn't ready to explain. Might never be ready. But she did cut back. From 6 days a week to 4. From double shifts to single. She needed time to heal. To rest. To figure out who she was now that survival wasn't her only concern. Patricia went to therapy. Something she couldn't have afforded before. She found a counselor who specialized in grief and trauma. Started processing everything. James's death. The eviction. The months of homelessness. The fear and shame and exhaustion. It helped. Slowly. Progress was measured in tiny increments. But she felt herself beginning to heal. Beginning to imagine a future that wasn't just about surviving. But she also did something unexpected. Something she couldn't stop thinking about. She kept thinking about the ship. The SS Helena. The cold metal cabin where she had slept. The cargo hold where she had found salvation. The place that had sheltered her when no one else would. 6 months after receiving the reward money, Patricia contacted the Port Authority. Asked about the abandoned ships in the harbor. Learned that they were technically owned by the city. Slated for demolition. Eventually. When budget allowed. But low priority. The SS Helena specifically was on a list to be scrapped. Torn apart for metal. Recycled. Erased from existence. Patricia asked if she could buy it. The Port Authority representative was confused. Buy what? The ship. The SS Helena. I want to purchase it. There was a long pause. Ma'am, that ship is condemned. It's not habitable. It's a safety hazard. Why would you want it? Because it saved my life, Patricia said simply. And I want to save it. It took months to navigate the bureaucracy. Forms. Inspections. Negotiations. The Port Authority thought she was crazy. Maybe she was. But she was determined. The final price was $50,000. Patricia paid in cash. Became the official owner of the SS Helena. A rusted abandoned cargo ship that most people considered worthless. But Patricia saw potential. Saw possibility. Saw a way to honor what the ship had been for her. And a way to help others who were in the place she had been. She hired contractors. Marine engineers. Restoration specialists. People who understood ships and safety and what it would take to make the SS Helena habitable again. It wasn't cheap. The renovations cost $400,000. More than half of what Patricia had left after buying her apartment and paying off debts. But she didn't care. This felt important. Felt necessary. Felt like the right thing to do with money that had come from doing the right thing. They replaced rotted wood. Repaired the hull. Installed working plumbing and electricity. Renovated the cabins one by one. 48 cabins total. Some small. Some larger. All clean and safe and warm. They built a commercial kitchen. Installed showers. Created common areas. Made the ship not just habitable but comfortable. A place where people could live with dignity. Patricia had a vision. She was going to turn the SS Helena into a shelter. Not just any shelter. A refuge specifically for women over 50 who had lost their homes. Women like her. Women who had fallen through the cracks of the system. Women who were too old to start over easily but too young to give up. She worked with social services. Got licensed. Hired staff. A director. A counselor. A cook. Security. People who understood trauma and homelessness and how to help without judging. The SS Helena Women's Refuge opened 18 months after Patricia found the paintings. The local news covered the story. Former homeless woman buys ship, turns it into shelter. Patricia was uncomfortable with the attention. Didn't like being in the spotlight. But she understood the value of awareness, of letting people know this place existed. 50 women moved in the first month. Women who had been living in cars, in shelters, on the street. Women who had lost jobs, lost homes, lost hope. They came with garbage bags full of belongings and defeat in their eyes. Patricia met each one, showed them their cabins, told them they could stay as long as they needed. No time limits, no judgment, just support and space to rebuild. She didn't tell them her story at first, didn't explain that she had been one of them, had slept in this very ship when it was a wreck. But gradually word got out. The women learned, and it mattered to them. Mattered that Patricia understood, that she wasn't looking down from a place of privilege, that she had been in the darkness too. Patricia hired case managers to help women find jobs, get benefits, access healthcare, navigate the systems that were so complicated when you were overwhelmed. She partnered with training programs, community colleges, organizations that helped with resumes and interview skills. She created support groups, spaces where women could talk about what they had lost, what they had survived, where they wanted to go. No toxic positivity, no forced gratitude, just honesty and solidarity and understanding. The ship had a library, donated books, comfortable chairs, a quiet space. Women could read, study, escape into other worlds for a while. Patricia remembered how important that had been when she was homeless. Having something to think about besides survival. There was a small chapel, non-denominational, for women who found comfort in faith, and for women who just needed a quiet place to sit. Patricia wasn't particularly religious, but she understood the human need for sacred space, for contemplation, for meaning. The SS Helena became more than a shelter. It became a community. Women supported each other, shared resources, shared stories, formed friendships. Some moved out after a few months, got apartments, got jobs, started over. Others stayed longer, needed more time. Patricia never pushed, never rushed. Everyone healed on their own timeline. The local news covered the grand opening. Patricia stood on the deck surrounded by women. Women who had nowhere else to go. Women who now had hope. Reporters asked questions. Cameras filmed. Patricia felt awkward, out of place. She wasn't comfortable being celebrated. Felt like a fraud sometimes. Like she didn't deserve credit for using money that had fallen into her lap. But the women at the shelter told her otherwise. Told her that what mattered wasn't where the money came from. What mattered was what she did with it. She could have kept it all, could have lived comfortably and ignored everyone else's suffering. But she hadn't. She had remembered what it felt like, and she had chosen to help. A reporter approached her. Young woman with a microphone and a cameraman. "Ms. Morgan, what would you say to someone who's going through what you went through? Someone who's lost everything?" Patricia looked out at the water, at the city beyond, at the harbor that had once represented her rock bottom and now represented hope. "I would tell them that rock bottom can be a foundation," she said slowly. "That sometimes losing everything creates space for something new. That help can come from the most unexpected places. And that you never know what's waiting just beneath the surface if you're brave enough to look." The reporter smiled. "And what about you? What comes next?" Patricia looked at the ship, at the women moving into their new temporary homes, at the second chances being created. "This," she said simply, "this is what comes next. Making sure no one else has to feel as alone and afraid as I did. Making sure the ship that gave me refuge can do the same for others." The story aired that night. Patricia watched it in her apartment, saw herself on screen, heard her own voice. It felt surreal, like watching someone else, some other woman who had survived and thrived. But it was her. It was really her. After the news story aired, donations came in. People sent money, sent supplies, offered to volunteer. Local businesses wanted to help. Patricia was overwhelmed. Hadn't expected this response, but she accepted it gratefully. Used every dollar to make the Refuge better, to help more women. Within a year they had helped over 100 women. Some short-term stays, others longer. Patricia kept track, remembered every name, every story, every woman who walked through the door scared and defeated and left with hope. 5 years later, the SS Helena Women's Refuge had helped over 300 women. Patricia ran it full-time, had quit the diner. This was her job now, her calling, the thing that gave her life meaning. She hired more staff, counselors, job coaches, a nurse who came twice a week. She partnered with addiction recovery programs, mental health services, legal aid organizations, created a network of support for women who needed so much more than just a place to sleep. The Refuge became known, respected, a model for other programs. Other cities contacted Patricia, asked for advice, wanted to know how to replicate what she had built. She consulted when she could, shared everything she knew, wanted other places to have what her city had. Patricia never forgot what it felt like. The fear, the shame, the exhaustion. She remembered sleeping in that cold metal cabin, remembered the desperation, the certainty that she would never recover, would never have a normal life again. And every night before she left the Refuge, Patricia would walk through the ship, past the cabins where women slept safely, past the kitchen where women prepared meals together, past the common room where women watched TV and laughed and slowly remembered how to be human. She would go down to the cargo hold, to the place where she had found the paintings. The hidden compartment was still there, empty now. The paintings were in museums, returned to families, back where they belonged. But Patricia had installed a plaque on the wall. Bronze, permanent. In this space on March 15th, a discovery was made that changed one life and touched hundreds more. May we always remember that hope can be found in unexpected places and that what we do with our second chances matters. Patricia would read the plaque and remember the desperation, the fear, the night she climbed aboard this ship with nowhere else to go. Remember the moment she found the box, the choice she made, the risk she took, and she would feel grateful, not for losing her home, not for James dying, not for the suffering, but for what came after, for the discovery that saved her, for the opportunity to turn her pain into purpose, for the chance to help others the way she had been helped. The SS Helena had been abandoned, forgotten, left to rust and decay, written off as worthless. But it had become something beautiful, something meaningful, a symbol of transformation, of resilience, of second chances, of refusing to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. Just like Patricia herself. 7 years after finding the paintings, Patricia stood on the deck of the SS Helena on a sunny afternoon. The ship looked nothing like it had when she first climbed aboard. It was clean, maintained, painted, alive with purpose. A woman approached her, late 50s, thin, tired looking, carrying 2 garbage bags. Patricia recognized the look, had worn it herself. "Are you Patricia?" The woman asked quietly. "Yes." "Welcome. What's your name?" "Linda. I just got evicted. I have nowhere to go. Someone at the shelter downtown told me about this place. Said you might have room." Patricia smiled, felt tears prick her eyes. "We have room. Come on. Let me show you your cabin." She led Linda below deck, showed her the clean, comfortable cabin, the bathroom, the kitchen, the common areas. Linda cried when she saw it. Patricia understood, remembered that feeling, relief mixed with disbelief. "You can stay as long as you need," Patricia said. "No time limit, no judgment, just support while you figure things out." "Why are you doing this?" Linda asked. "Why help people like me?" Patricia thought about how to answer. thought about everything she had been through, everything she had learned. Because someone helped me, she said finally, in a way I never expected. When I had nothing and nowhere to go, I found help in the most unlikely place. And I decided that if I ever had the chance, I would do the same for others. Would make sure no one had to feel as alone as I felt. Linda looked at her. Really looked. Saw something in Patricia's eyes. Understanding. Empathy. The mark of someone who had been there. Thank you, Linda whispered. You're welcome. And Linda, one more thing. This isn't charity. You're not a burden. You're a woman who deserves dignity and support. Don't forget that. Over the years, Patricia told her story countless times. To reporters. To donors. To the women who came through the refuge. She never got comfortable with it. Never stopped feeling vulnerable when she shared. But she kept doing it. Because stories mattered. Because representation mattered. Because women needed to know that homelessness didn't have to be the end. She spoke at conferences. Wrote articles. Appeared on podcasts. Always with the same message. That people who are homeless are people. That they deserve dignity and support and second chances. That the systems are broken. That we can do better. That we must do better. Patricia became an advocate. Used her platform to push for policy changes. For more affordable housing. For better mental health services. For support for older adults who were struggling. She testified before City Council. Met with legislators. Made noise. Made waves. Made a difference. The refuge grew. Patricia bought a second building nearby. Expanded capacity. Added services. Partnered with more organizations. Created a pipeline from homelessness to housing to stability. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it worked. It helped. It mattered. 10 years after finding the paintings, Patricia was 69 years old. The SS Helena Women's Refuge was thriving. Over 1,000 women had passed through. Most had successfully transitioned to independent living. Had jobs. Had apartments. Had rebuilt their lives. Patricia still lived in her simple one-bedroom apartment. Still drove the same used car. Still lived modestly. She had money left. Could have lived much more comfortably. But she chose to pour resources into the refuge. Into helping others. That felt right. That felt like honoring James. Honoring what they had valued. What they had believed. A widow who lost everything. Who took refuge in an abandoned ship. Who found something in the hull that saved her life. Not just financially. But in every way that mattered. Patricia thought about James every day. Missed him every day. The grief had softened but never disappeared. She talked to him sometimes. Out loud when she was alone. Told him about the refuge. About the women she was helping. Asked him if he was proud. She thought he would be. Thought he would understand that she had taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and transformed it. Had refused to let tragedy be the end of her story. Patricia also thought about her mother. About strength and survival. About doing what needed to be done even when it was hard. Her mother would have understood. Would have approved. Would have said, keep going. Keep fighting. Keep helping. On the 10th anniversary of finding the paintings, Patricia organized a celebration at the refuge. A party for all the women who were currently living there. 4 staff. 4 volunteers. 4 donors. For everyone who had been part of this journey. She stood at the bow of the SS Helena and looked out at the gathering. Over 100 people. Laughing. Talking. Eating. Celebrating what had been built. Patricia felt overwhelmed. Felt unworthy. Felt grateful beyond words. A woman approached. Margaret. One of the first residents. She had lived at the refuge for 8 months before getting a job and an apartment. That was 7 years ago. She came back often. Volunteered. Wanted to give back. This place saved my life, Margaret said. You saved my life. Patricia shook her head. You saved your own life. You did the work. You rebuilt. I just provided a place to do it." Margaret smiled. "You're too modest. But I get it. I felt the same way when people tried to thank me for volunteering. But Patricia, let people be grateful. Let them appreciate what you've done. You deserve that." Patricia hugged her. Felt tears. Always tears. She had become such a crier. But good tears. Healing tears. As the sun set over the harbor, Patricia stood alone on the deck. Watched the sky turn orange and pink and purple. The same colors as that first night when she had climbed aboard the ship with nowhere else to go. She thought about how far she had come. From evicted widow to advocate and refuge founder. From sleeping on metal bunks to changing lives. From rock bottom to purpose. She thought about the paintings. About the impossible coincidence of finding them. About the choice she made to report them instead of selling them. About how doing the right thing had led to this. Patricia believed in fate sometimes. Believed that maybe James had led her to this ship. To this discovery. To this purpose. She wasn't religious. Didn't claim to understand the universe. But she believed in something. In meaning. In connections. In the possibility that our lives matter in ways we can't always see. She pulled out her phone. Opened the photos she had taken that day so long ago. The paintings. The contracts. The evidence that had changed everything. She had kept them. A record of the moment her life pivoted. Patricia sent Agent Morrison a text. Just wanted to say thank you. For believing me. For helping me. For everything. The response came quickly. "The pleasure was all mine, Ms. Morgan. What you've built is incredible. James would be proud." Patricia smiled. Typed back, "I hope so. And thank you for saying that." She put her phone away. Looked out at the water one more time. Then she walked back to the party. To the women. To the life she had built from ruins. Patricia Morgan had lost her husband. Lost her home. Lost everything she thought defined her. But in that loss she had found something. Strength she didn't know she had. Purpose she hadn't imagined. A capacity to help others that had transformed her grief into grace. The SS Helena had been her refuge. Her salvation. Her second chance. And now it was all of those things for hundreds of other women. Women who climbed aboard defeated and left rebuilt. Women who discovered that rock bottom could be a foundation. That endings could be beginnings. That hope could be found in the most unlikely places. Patricia would never forget what it felt like to be desperate. To be homeless. To be invisible. And she would never stop fighting to make sure other women had what she had been given. Shelter. Support. Dignity. Hope. This was her legacy. Not the money. Not the recognition. But the lives changed. The women saved. The proof that kindness and courage could transform the world one person at a time. A widow who lost everything. Who took refuge in an abandoned ship. Who found salvation in a hidden compartment. Who chose honesty over survival. Who built something beautiful from something broken. This was her story. And it was far from over. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of survival, resilience, and hope. Drop a comment below and let me know what city you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever discovered something unexpected that changed your life? Have you ever had to choose between doing the right thing and the easy thing? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might inspire someone who needs hope today. And if you or someone you know is struggling with homelessness, please reach out for help. There are resources available. Organizations that care. People who want to help. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You matter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And remember, sometimes the most beautiful transformations come from our darkest moments. Sometimes losing everything creates space for something better. Sometimes the things we think are endings are actually new beginnings in disguise. Keep going. Keep fighting. keep believing that better days are coming. Because they are. Patricia's story proves it. And your story can too.